Welcome back, one and all, to PodStance, the PunkStance Podcast. It is me once again introducing you to a very special episode of Albums That Saved My Life, because there's no albums this time. What? Pause for effect. For those of you who don't know, at the time of recording at least, Slam Dunk Festival took place last weekend. Every year it brings together the very best of contemporary pop-punk, rock and alternative, giving a very literal platform to both the newbies and veterans of the scene. While I was unable to attend due to having other things going on, a couple of people I know did get to. So my guests today are my brother James, who has been on the show before back in October. Be sure to check out his episode. It was episode 3 for all the previous discussions that we had, as well as his partner and brand new voice to the show, Rebekah. While James is and has been a pop-punk fan since the early days when he was a little wee babby boy, this was Rebekah's first time at the festival, so I was very interested to see what their thoughts were about this absolute banger of a festival. We break down this year's lineup and pick out the very best and worst it had to offer, as well as the must-see bands that came from it. James and Becka discussed their own personal highlights and lowlights from the show, and all in all, it was a really enjoyable conversation to have. Whether you attended or not, or even want to attend in the future, this is definitely an episode you'll want to listen to at least once, maybe twice, or eight times, just for a laugh, you know? So, as an advertising agency would put it, grab your festival gear, lukewarm beers, and get ready to mosh as we celebrate the vibrant, chaotic, and pop-punk infused world of Slam Dunk. God, that was awful. I'll see you on the other side.
Your dad came in here, farted, and then left.
Yeah. That's just what he does, though.
Yeah, no, but we all do it. You should add a little gag reel to the end of these episodes. It's like after you run like the end credits or whatever it is you do.
Warning: this episode starts by talking about
farts. Yeah.
Well, there's nothing wrong. I mean, I'm sure my audience would love it.
That's a real.
I have no idea how this is going to go, because obviously we're all sat on the same sofa. But the microphone is between you two. I mean, they all know what I sound like. The whole point of the show is that my guests get to have
you're the MC. You're like the question master.
The Mr. Question Master.
The Mr. Question.
You're the PM. The podcast master.
I'm the podcast master. But yeah, well, this is only a quick one anyway. So
yeah,
because James, you've done yours. They're familiar with you.
Slam Dunk Special.
Slam Dunk Special. If you haven't heard James's episode, that was episode 3 of Albums That Saved My Life. That was your one with Lower Than Atlantis. Episode 3. We're recording this on the bank holiday Monday. So Slam Dunk was actually on Saturday, so 2 days ago. How much of it do you actually remember?
Well, actually, I remember the whole thing.
Wow, that's a first.
No, we weren't drinking the day. It was remarkably hot. The pints were remarkably expensive. I'd already spent a lot of money to be there. I wasn't going to spend £12 more on some watered down piss beer.
Lovely.
Well, for those of you who don't know, I've got my brother James Buxton to the left of me.
Bonsoir.
He obviously did episode 3 of Albums That Saved My Life. That was Lower Than Atlantis.
Correct.
That was a great episode. I always go back to that one. So he's back for the Slam Dunk Special, but we also have a brand new person who will have their own episode in due course. We have Rebekah Lee, his partner, who also went to Slam Dunk. Welcome to the show for the first time.
Thank you very much.
Obviously, you'll have your own one in a couple of weeks that we won't spoil.
Of course.
But I thought, as we're both here, well, you're both here, I'm sort of perpetually part of this now. I thought I'd get your take, because I was meant to go. Unfortunately, I had other commitments, that being a girlfriend. But I thought, obviously, there's a very particular reason why you went to this Slam Dunk over the others. But for both of you, kind of for different reasons, to be honest.
Yeah, well, for me, it was because it was this year, and we can't go to the ones that were in the past because they've already been and gone. But no, this one stood out. This was the return to the scene for Mallory Knox, a band that have been broken up for, 5-6 years now?
7, actually.
Wired was 2017, and then Sugar was late 2017, or maybe even earlier. And then I think it was early 2018 or so that they... So 6 or 7 years. Bang on.
It's been a while. They did actually have another album after that, if you recall.
Without the frontman, though, right?
We don't talk about that.
We don't talk about that one. And by the state of their show today.
Saturday.
Let's take a pause. Yes, they did have that 4th album, self-titled album, without Mikey Chapman, the frontman. But we don't talk about that one. And considering the performance that they put on Saturday, I don't think they talk about it that much either. It was all classics. It was a really fantastic show, actually. It was like they never left.
Yeah, it was a really, really good show. I mean, I've seen Mallory once before. That was Reading 2017, I believe,
Yes,
as well.
I believe so.
And that was actually the first time I encountered them. So, yeah, I got into them at Reading. And then, obviously, Mikey left. And they didn't release any more music because
No, they didn't.
No, they didn't.
No, they didn't.
So yeah, I got into them after having seen them live, and then they sort of completely went. And yeah, it was great to see them again from, I mean, like a casual like fan standpoint, not the huge fan that James is, but I really enjoyed seeing them. They were a fantastic set. It was good as well because obviously they're doing some shows coming up later in the year.
October, yeah.
For 10 years?
10 Years of Asymmetry.
10
Yes,
Years of
their
Asymmetry.
second album. Many consider it their best album. I don't. I think it's their second best album, but many do, I'm sure. But yeah, a lot of the songs they played at Slam Dunk were from that album.
Yeah.
It was good to see that there was no animosity there as well. I think there were a lot of rumours when Mikey originally left the band that it was a bit of bad blood in the group themselves. But no, they're making jokes about it, making jokes about him dipping out early. The show opened with them playing a recording of Taylor Swift's "We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together," and then pivoting directly into God, what was it? They pivot. Was it Back in Black?
Yeah, it was Back in Black.
Back in Black, which was a good way. They all walked onto that. It was good fun.
I was expecting Backstreet Boys, but
Oh well, The Boys Are Back in Town by Thin
What?
Lizzy would have worked just as well.
Oh,
but no, it was
all that, yeah.
But yeah, it was a really good show. They got a really good slot as well. It was middle of the day. There wasn't really anything else competing with them, except the Blackout, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it was it was a great slot. It was a great show. It was all classics, all bangers. Mosh pits were fantastic.
Yep, you absolutely ditched me the second a Pit Heavy song came on.
Yeah.
You just have a tendency to do that.
Oh
anyway.
yeah, absolutely. Any single time we see anything even vaguely pit-worthy.
But listen, I am 26 or 27 years old.
Yeah.
I've only got so many mosh pits left in me. I've got to make the most
Spine gives way.
until it all gives way. That said, actually, Slam Dunk Festival,
Just as a general.
just as a general, the clientele quite a bit older than you'd expect from a lot of other festivals,
Yeah, I
especially
was
the other ones on
impressed.
this weekend. I would argue, I don't think impressed is the word, certainly not when regarding hairlines.
Oh, mean.
I think
mean.
I would argue the average age there was probably around 31 or 32.
Yeah, probably.
Largely because a lot of the music that they were playing is
20 years old.
20 years old. We saw the red jumpsuit apparatus.
We did. They had a great set, actually. I think they were like one of the early highlights because they were quite early on in the day. They were 1 o'clock-ish. Was that right?
It was like the second or third act we saw. I
It
believe.
was,
They had,
yeah. But they were really a lot of fun. So obviously they've got their one song. But like Face Down is absolutely a banger for a reason. But what they did was they played obviously like their big like well-known songs. And they always did like a preface of like, this is what this song is. You might know it. It was in this TV show or it was in this video game. But like, they had the audience on side. They let people know why we know them and why they're a great band to still listen to all these years later.
I agree. Yeah, I think when you've been a band as long as they have, it's been 21 years of red jumpsuit apparatus.
And that man is still a skinny
He's
legend.
still a skinny man with very long, very lush hair, which is more than you could say for most of the people there. I'm going to keep making this joke. It was very concerning to me personally. But no, yeah, I think when you've been that type of band with one huge song and then a back catalogue that's like beloved by fans but not by the wider population, you sort of understand how these gigs go. You know how to get the crowd rolled up. You know how to keep them engaged. You know which songs you're going to play last. And one thing that, as Becca said, they'd introduce their songs. Say, here's where you probably know it from. But also, they knew right before they had their big finale, they had to get the crowd going somehow. So they had a
and
great.
like, this was great as well because it was absolutely a way of like paying tribute to what came before them and what inspired them.
Absolutely, yeah. They're making references to Warped Tour. Talking about what they used to get up to back in the day.
Those were the days.
Those were the days. And obviously they closed the show out with Face Down, which was fantastic.
So good.
Really, really excellent show. But preceded that with a cover of Blink-182's All the Small Things. Great show, got the crowd going.
I think that might have actually had a bigger reception than Face Down, weirdly.
It may well have done. It was at the time of day where the bands that people were there for hadn't quite started yet.
Yeah.
Might have been a lot of people there that hadn't heard of Red Jumpsuit Apparatus before.
It's very possible.
Hadn't listened to that one pop punk compilation CD that came out in like 2012 that featured them.
Both of them.
Both of them. And yeah, just turned up for something to do whilst waiting for someone else to come on and going, oh, Blink-182, I know that song. I did find it deeply concerning that a band who came on stage said, we're all in our early 40s now, and we're like, yeah, we grew up listening to Blink-182, and I think, but I grew up listening to Blink-182, and at first you go, wow, I guess they've been around for a while, and then you realise, oh wait, these guys in their early 40s, they're like barely a decade older than me. Oh no. And that sort of sent me spiralling for an hour or two.
It's always good to have a cheeky existential crisis at a festival.
Absolutely.
Always.
I think the benefit of Slam Dunk is a lot of these bands have been around quite a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're in that really interesting phase with especially pop punk as like a genre, where you've got, the old heads really that like started the movements. And now this new sort of generation, like we saw Honey Revenge as well, which were absolutely a massive like surprise highlight for us. Like I'd never heard of them.
Yeah, absolutely. They were on the Kerrang stage.
Yeah, they were.
Again, like we said about Jumpsuit earlier, they were
really early in the day.
Very early in the day. We went to see them because we were at that tent at the time. Nothing we planned to see had started yet. We were like, oh, let's give these guys a go. This will be fun. And it was a real highlight of the whole weekend.
Yeah.
They did a really great set.
Loads of energy.
Great stage presence. Dancing left a little to be desired. But the music was fantastic.
And they can high kick.
They can high kick really well. But yeah, really, really good show. Definitely going to be checking them out.
Yeah, 100%. They would definitely.
It was their album last year was Retrovision, I believe.
Yeah, that's the first one.
Debut,
I think.
yeah.
Yeah. They said it was their first festival.
That's brilliant. I remember when I think it was their debut single "Miss Me" came out. I don't know if they played that one.
They did.
They did play that, and they played Rerun as well.
Rerun's another good one. Yeah,
which was apparently the reason they got to come over to the UK in the first place. That was their breakout. Yeah,
it's interesting. Like when you talk about it, especially with some of the bands you mentioned, because obviously Mallory Knox is one of your favourite bands. Against the Current's one of your favourite bands.
Yeah, that's what I went there for.
Foreshadowing for
future.
But I wouldn't describe those two as pop punk bands. I would say modern rock and probably alternative rock to an extent. Is that like a running theme, do you think, for future Slam Dunk festivals? Or do you think it's something that has happened in past ones that's going to carry on?
I'm not entirely sure. I'd hope so, because like I was, like what I mean for seeing very, very close together Honey Revenge and then Jumpsuit is you've got those two quite different versions of
the same genre.
The same genre, yeah, but they are kind of opposite ends of the spectrum, like years-wise and like style-wise. Because I'd say, personally for me, Honey Revenge really reminded of Against Current. Whereas obviously Jumpsuit are a very big mainstay and very obviously influenced by Blink, which is, very titular of the pop punk movement, really. Like they kind of started it, sort of.
To an extent.
To an extent.
I feel like a lot of bands could be incorporated into starting the movement, but we're moving into the fourth generation of the.
Exactly, it feels like
we're bands like Honey Revenge. And As December Falls, I think, also played there as well.
Yes.
It's another female-fronted band who I've been listening to a lot of. There's a lot of new bands that are turning up and taking the genre in a completely different way.
Yeah.
But then you've also got like Neck Deep released their latest album in January.
That was good.
The Story So Far have their new album coming out next month, which I'm painfully excited for. 4 Year Strong have got their album coming out.
Yeah.
Boston Manor have announced a new album, and they've been going around for 10 if not 20 years.
Yeah.
So it feels like there's still a very nice mix between the modern guys, the new ones, and the sort of classics that started it all off.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it helps that it's a genre that's had to grow and change to stay relevant.
Yeah.
In the queue on the way in, we were stood behind a guy with a T-shirt that read "Pop Punk is dead?" ? No way. The worst genre in music is back, baby. And I thought...
I'm surprised you remembered that in such detail.
It was quite good.
We were making jokes about it on the way in. I don't know if he heard them. But A, it's not the worst genre of music of all time. Of course, that's new metal, which is also having a big comeback.
Big comeback.
We will see
conversation.
Limp Bizkit back in the arenas before long. But also, I think it's not that it's coming back. It's more that it's coming back in a way that's familiar to people that were into it back in the olden days.
Yeah.
You know, you've got bands like Neck Deep and Story So Far, who, you know, they've been around for like 10 plus years.
They were the front runners of the last.
They were the front runners of the last generation that were very sort of Blink oriented. But you've now got bands coming in who are inspired by Neck Deep, Wonder Years, Story So Far. And I feel like it comes in waves, and this new generation is inspired by bands that were directly inspired by what started it. And I think, you know, what's coming in that's new is new in an interesting but familiar way.
Yeah.
You know, Honey Revenge are great. I thought that was a really, really good set.
Absolutely.
And the whole time I was thinking, damn, this really sounds like Against the Current.
It does.
Who in my head, as an old head, are like the new band. You know, Against the Current, they're still the up and comers, but they're not. You know, they've got 500 million streams on one song alone on Spotify. You know, they've been around for years. They're doing international tours. They're doing arenas and stuff as well. You know, it's time to pass the torch almost, and
but not quite yet.
But not quite yet.
Against the Current,
because
absolutely.
we like them.
Against the
right?
Current are still at the peak of their career. They'll be
They
around
are.
for a while, but they're not the new kids anymore.
They're not, and that was really good to see as well, because like you said, bit spoilery for when I do my episode. I'm gonna do it on Against the Current because they're one of my favorite bands ever. And it was, so I've seen them once before. I saw them in 2018, which I believe was the last time they actually came to the UK.
Where were they originally from?
So they're American.
Oh, right.
And they do a lot of tours around, obviously, that side. But if they do a world tour, they do, you know, a couple of dates over in Europe, but it's Europe, so like not just us. And I've not managed to catch them since 2018, which was when their album Past Lives came out. So their newer stuff that I've got really, really hugely into wasn't even out then. Actually, I think they only did half of Past Lives when I went to see them the first time.
I believe it was just the singles. Yeah.
It was, yeah, which I mean was amazing because they started as a covers band, and it was really interesting to see how they've grown and they've changed since I managed to last catch them. And like, there's so much more confidence in them now, and they've got such a different stage presence. Like, they've always been a very high energy band, always. But like, you know, their older stuff is a bit slower, a little bit more emotional, I'd say. But this new era that they've got, which I would say, is the peak of their careers, is absolutely just brilliant, high energy, really reminiscent of like old pop punk, even though really they're sort of alternative, I would say. But like, watching them and seeing their progression was honestly incredible. Like, I've never thought of them as a pit band, and yet Pit's in almost every song.
Yeah, but that's again like an energy that comes from the audience and the people watching as well. Like, if they're really into it, they'll find a way to pit to a single acoustic song if they can.
Yeah, true.
And I guess I don't know, don't quote me on this, I guess, but like, I wouldn't say you're as big of a pop punk centric person than like I am or James.
No,
is.
definitely not.
Would you say that Slam Dunk is still a pop punk festival, or do you think it's something broader than that? Do you think it's evolved into something different?
It's kind of hard to say because, like, obviously we had a lot of the older bands when we saw them. Like, we had We the Kings, which also brilliant set. They have that one song, but no, they were fantastic stage presence. But like, it was You Me at 6 because it's a final farewell tour really that they're on now. Even though their energy, I don't think that they're retiring because they have to. Like, you know, they're not running out of energy or anything like that. It's very much we're calling time on it because we feel like it's time.
It's been 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and then obviously Jumpsuit, and you had Pennywise, they're quite an older band, aren't they, as well?
Yeah, that was just a bunch of old blokes.
Yeah.
Lot of fun, but like again, not sort of winding down at all.
No, not at all. But yeah, and then you had who was it before? All American Rejects. All American Rejects as well. Like they're quite an old band. For this version of Slam Dunk, I'd say it's absolutely a pop punk festival. It's a celebration of the genre and how it's evolving and where it came from, really.
I agree. I think the definition of pop punk is what's up for debate here. There's going to be a lot of people, a lot of purists who feel that the genre itself sort of disappeared around the time of, Fall Out Boy and All Time Low becoming enormously popular, and that sort of being the cutoff. Which is why you've got a lot of bands like We the Kings who are, probably late 30s by now. All American Rejects are all in their 40s. Red Jumpsuit again, all in their 40s. And them being like the main appeal, them all getting main stage shows. And I feel like there are going to be a lot of people there that believe that that's what pop punk is, and anything that follows that up, if it leans more into sort of the Midwest emo vibe, like Mum Jeans does, or something a bit more, a bit poppier, like Against the Current or Honey Revenge, that's not, purist pop punk. But at the same time, it's a festival. If every band sounded exactly the same, what's the point? You look at Reading Festival, which ostensibly started out as a rock and roll festival back in the day. It's certainly not that anymore. Dua Lipa's played on that stage. Stormzy's been on that stage. It's not a rock and roll festival anymore, even though the majority of the acts that play at Reading still have,
rock
vibes. But I think pinning a festival down to one genre like that isn't going to make it more interesting. It's a good starting point. Yeah. I think, well over half the bands playing at Slam Dunk definitely fit the vibe of like classic pop punk.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's necessary for all of them to still classify itself as such.
Also, it's stifling to the genre. It'd be an insult, really, if they all did just sound the same, because how do you get great music if no one evolves it and no one takes the theme of it and then does their own thing with it and follows the melody the way that they see fit? It would be wrong if everybody sounded the same and we could only pin pop punk down to, like 4 bars that appear in every song.
Well, I guess the sort of question after that is, where do you think the genre is going? Having heard the sort of variety of bands that are there and the kind of sounds that the soundscape that it creates, where would you say the genre is going next as we move into the 4th generation?
I think it's going to be lighter.
I disagree.
Okay.
I think it's going heavier, and I think something that was like quite underrepresented at Slam Dunk, which I think is, probably to do with the fact that it is a real, to like reuse the term, a real old heads festival, is I think pop punk is probably going to be moving in a less male centric, sort of more queer focused direction.
Very much so.
I think it's not like we're ever going to run out of bands full of like greasy dudes complaining that they got like shut down at high school or whatever. We've got Hunt Mulligan for that, and
they're at the peak of their career.
And they're at the peak of their career, and they're fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but I think having like Against the Current having a really like prominent spot at the festival,
that was good.
I think Honey Revenge being there as well. I keep bringing them up, but it was a really, really good set.
They were fantastic, honestly.
And like the meaning of punk has changed over time. I think to keep both the pop and the punk aspect equal and moving forward, I think it's going to be... I think you saying it's lighter is correct in some ways, but I feel like there's going to be a lot more anger. I feel like...
I mean lighter as in like the actual tone. Like, I don't mean like what's in the music. I think the lyrics themselves, yeah, absolutely. Getting angrier. Look at the world we live in. Pop punk is always, or just punk in general, but music really has developed this angrier, edgier tone. There's a lot to be angry at.
I completely agree. I think pop punk has always been like the slightly quieter, slightly less aggressive cousin to punk. It's sort of like an entryway into that more political music.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, Neck Deep's album this year had some of their first like actively political music.
I think We Need More Bricks is
We Need More Bricks.
Exactly.
Brilliant, yeah.
A great song.
Great song.
And a very blatant example of their sort of earlier political views coming through. And then I don't need to censor it. There was "Shut the Fuck Up."
Yeah.
Which you know,
directly
name drops Boris, Trump, and a smattering of others.
And the thing about those songs is, great songs, like Neck Deep, great band. It felt a little out of place for them, considering like their whole deal as like very generic pop punk. Their words, not mine. Is, you know, whining about girls and life and being depressed and stuff. And I feel like the way the world is going, pop punk is going to need to lean more into the heavier punk side, the more political side, to stay relevant. But it's also going to, from a more musical standpoint, lean a bit more towards the twinkly side, you know?
The vaguely lyrical, side. That's what I mean in a lighter sound.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to slightly run away from... So what you were saying when we saw Pennywise is you don't hear pop punk like that anymore. So they did that cover of Stand By Me.
Yes.
Which, you know, they had a lot of fun with. They gave it your traditional pop punk riffs, like playing around with the guitars and everything like that. And yeah, we listened to it. It was absolutely brilliant. But that take on music, that very traditional pop punk with the very screamy sound of the guitars and just messing around and seeing what comes, I feel like pop punk is moving a little bit away from that. It's not just a wall of sound. It's got a meaning. It's got, it's very much derived so that the lyrics are what are front and center and hit home. It's not just about the music, but about what is behind the music, about where the emotions come from that fuel it. And I think that's probably more the future of it. So that, you have a lighter sound, but a heavier message.
Absolutely. I think it also comes from the fact that audiences are demanding a little bit more from their artists these days.
Also true,
I think there's a lot more need for artists to have opinions about things in the real world. They need to sort of take a stance and use their platform wisely. I think that's a good thing. I know it's a lot of people aren't a fan of having every thought that comes from a celebrity's head be publicized. But I think when you've got that platform, you need it.
Yeah.
And I think that sets certain expectations for people as well. You know, you can't just, be in a boy band and sing songs about going to the club and drinking whiskey and hooking up and going home. I feel like if you've got that level of fame, you need to have something to say.
You do, yeah.
It doesn't need to be the right thing. I think policing exactly what it isn't the right way forward. But they need to say something.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to have something to say, and I think there's demand for that. You look at where's pop music, for example, going on at the moment. You've got
Taylor Swift,
who end of list. But Taylor Swift, at the very least, say what you will, she's got something to say in her music that isn't just what the studios think is popular at the moment.
True.
Look back at the 2010s. Katy Perry's biggest songs are about going out partying when you're in high school,
Teenage Dream,
being in California, and feeling young when you're not young anymore. Whereas you've got artists like Chappell Roan at the moment, who has got a really strong following. There's a lot of poetry in those lyrics.
There is.
And I feel like that same sentiment of demanding a little bit more sincerity, keyword there, from your artists is going to be crucial to pop punk moving forward as well.
Yeah, no,
you
I
can't
agree.
just keep singing about sitting in your basement smoking weed all day. There's always going to be songs about that, and they're
and
always
it's
going to be
relatable.
they're always going to be welcome, but that can't be all there is.
No,
there
has to be. I mean, everyone's there's people, there's heart behind these songs. It's what gets you to listen to them, because this is the genre where you can scream along to it and you feel you're being heard, that someone out there feels the way that you feel. And I think that's why this is the genre for that. There needs to be a message somewhere in there.
Absolutely.
And like you said, we can't police what people say, because that's completely the wrong thing. But they've got thoughts in their head. I'd like to hear it. I'd like to know, what people are thinking, and that they're using their platforms to raise awareness for something.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. As you said, they're thinking something. I'd rather know what that is than what their label is telling them they need to think.
100%.
And I think pop punk is going to be a good breeding ground for that.
Absolutely.
As a slightly more alternative opportunity.
That's still very popular.
Exactly.
I'll take it in a slightly antithetical route then.
Go on.
Because you're talking about a lighter sound with more sort of poignant lyrics.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed in the set list, you had your sort of classic water parks and the sort of larger pop punk bands.
Yep.
You have the more emo-centric, like the Wonder Years, Mum Jeans, Arm's Length, who I adore. That's the more Midwestern emo kind of vibe. And then you have I Prevail, Asking Alexandra, The Ghost Inside, that lean towards hardcore and the metal side.
Yeah.
One thing I have noticed that's sort of dropped off is pop punk's slightly heavier younger brother, Easycore. And I think this is probably more for you, James.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure I know what Easycore is.
So bands like A Day to Remember, 4 Years Strong, that genre kicking off in like the early 2010s, that is sort of the opposite of still having those sort of silly fun time lyrics, but having a much heavier sound. Do you think that's going to come back into, much like pop punk's had a resurgence, do you think Easycore's going to take the same route? Because obviously 4 Years Strong is still going, who are one of my all-time favourite bands, and a lot of pop punk groups, especially Neck Deep, have delved in Easycore with things like Don't Wait, I think it was, with Sam Carter.
Yes.
That was a very Easycore-centric song. Like, do you think that's going to make a comeback?
I believe that Easycore is just on a bit of a lull. I think Easycore is, it's for people that aren't quite ready to commit to metalcore, which is itself for people that aren't quite ready to commit to hardcore, which is itself just for people that aren't ready to commit to heavy metal. I think Easycore is for people that want pop punk, but they want something that they can like kick someone's head into in a pit at the same time. I don't condone kicking people's heads in. That's not what a mosh pit is for. But yeah, I think it's going to come back. I think this sincerity in that music is probably going to gradually lead to that becoming more mainstream anyway. I think there has been an issue with some bands, not going to name names, but if you were to remember them, it would be on A Day specifically. James. Anyway, I feel like a Monday, if you will. But yeah, no, I'm not going to name A Day to Remember by calling them out.
Oh
but the issue with them, I feel, in recent years, because A Day to Remember had 3 or 4 albums in a row that were just spectacular, just wall-to-wall bangers, because they had something to say, because they were young and they didn't have a lot of money, and they were channeling the anger of growing up in a California that wasn't representing them into like very, very good easycore or like power pop music. And then they got rich and famous and successful. They kept trying to maintain that. Didn't work. Their last couple of albums have been not good. They've started collaborating with, multi-million-dollar producers. I'm pretty sure they did a song with like Marshmello or someone. And it lost its sincerity a bit. And as sort of like the leading like harbingers of that genre, I feel like they kind of led the course for easycore becoming a bit shallow. That's just my personal opinion, but I feel like it didn't have the same heaviness as, emotional heaviness as something like hardcore can. It was just kind of there for the spectacle. It was pop punk for people who thought that pop punk wasn't quite heavy enough. And but I feel like naturally, as the world continues to not get better and people have more and more things to say, I think the genre is going to get heavier. And I think easycore is going to come back, maybe not as the dominant form of pop punk, maybe not nearly as dominant as it has been in the past, but I don't think it's going anywhere, and I think it's just in a bit of a lull at the moment.
Because obviously you said that Chunk is playing Le Slam Dunk, or whatever it's called.
Le Slam Dunk, it's a Slam Dunk Francais in Lyon in June.
But they're, again, another group that have been at the forefront of that genre, and they had an album 3 years ago? Gone Are the Good Days.
Yes.
And that was very good.
That was very good. Chunk No Captain Chunk, a band that I do adore, is like a prime example of the bad direction that easycore has gone in, personally. Their songs are basically just pop songs with a breakdown in the middle.
I'm here for that.
Well, this is the thing. It slaps. It's great, but it's sort of it's an indictment of the direction that everything's going. It's becoming more corporate, becoming more safe. The songs are all about hanging out with your bros and imagine like a Nicky Yor song or like a Marshmello song. Imagine the lyrical complexity of that and then put a hardcore breakdown in the middle of it and you've got a Chunk No Captain Chunk song.
I mean, vibes.
Well, this is it. There is, there's a market for that. I'm probably part of it. But that can't be the dominant form of the genre.
No, I do
Which
agree.
is what's happened to easycore.
Well, that's fair enough. I mean, I was looking through the set list again, and I just noticed that there weren't many bands, if any, that sort of fit into that spectrum? I mean, of the bands that you saw, were there any particular surprises through that? I mean, you've mentioned Honey Revenge, all the bands that you went to go and see, obviously, but were there any that you sort of popped in and just went, oh, this was pretty good?
For me, honestly, Mom Jeans.
Oh yeah, you went in thinking...
I went in thinking, this might not be for me. But I was thoroughly charmed. I really was. Because again, they've got that lighter lyrical sound. I think, really. Like their opening 4, I think, were that lighter lyrical sound, and then they started going into the heavier, more traditional pop punk style. That I was kind of looking for, and I really enjoyed. And yeah, they were kind of a revelation for me. I think maybe it was because they were on the Cross Keys stage, which was the smallest of the 4. So it wasn't a big crowd by any means. I'd say like maybe 200 tops. It was not a big crowd. But their crowd work was incredibly engaging, and like I think this was something that all of the bands that we saw had brilliant stage presence, like really had that aura of, we are someone that you want to listen to, which has always been what pop punk has been for me. They've always had something about them that just grabs your attention and does not let it go. But yeah, Mom Jeans for me really had like an earnestness about them that I don't think I felt from any of the other bands particularly that I saw.
I agree. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier about authenticity.
Yeah.
I know I was saying, you need to have something to say about, politics or whatever.
Yeah.
And Mom Jeans don't.
No.
They simply do not.
Yeah.
But everything they say just feels very authentic.
Yeah.
Yes, a lot of their songs are about hanging out with the boys and smoking weed and like chilling out and falling in and out of love.
But they're ones who use that platform again. Like they were probably the only band at the festival who made a big point of going, hey, we want to thank all of the organizers, all of the staff working, like the security guys are doing a great job, all of the vendors and all of the people who, put the festival on. And I think that was one of the nice things, like their music maybe doesn't have anything to say, but when they have a presence, when they have a stage, they use it. And all right, it's not like the biggest thing in the world to go, hey, thank you to the people that put this thing on so that we could be here. But to them it is. Yeah.
And they have such a tangible identity as well.
This is it. It's just a band for the boys. One thing I really appreciated is they were very honest about the show. They knew what they wanted from it. They were very happy with it. Partway through, they said, look, 4 songs in, there hasn't been a pit yet. We flew in economy here for 10.5 hours. If there isn't a circle pit, I'm going to be very upset. But it was very entertaining. They said it in a way that was very charming, got everyone on side. Their bass player was fantastic with the crowd work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone was going along with it. He was just having a joke. And Mom Jeans have like previously gotten a lot of flack from more sort of quote unquote purists in the scene because they're not quite pop punk. They're not quite Midwest emo. They're not quite alternative. They just kind of bandy around between them. And I don't think that's a problem. I think that's very authentic to who they are. They make the music they want to make. Sort of going back to like not really wanting to hear what the label thinks is popular. They're just going out there. They're making music that works for them. They're singing about what they want to sing about. And I think at the end of the day, it doesn't quite matter as much if they're not singing about what's going on in the world. Because that's not what they're for. Their music is a vehicle to get what they're feeling across. And I think the fact that, I'd say they're probably one of the bigger bands in their genre, but the genre they play is not big. So they've still not quite hit that point where they're just singing for, because it's the job that they have to do. They're still putting out music that means something to them.
What was it that they introduced the set with? You mentioned it.
As mentioned, Becca had never heard of Mom Jeans before.
I had not.
I've been listening to them for a couple of years now. And I said to Becca on the way over, I said, look, whether you like their music or not, I think it's a 50-50. But you're absolutely going to understand, like, straight away why they're, one of my favourite bands from the last few years. So we turn up at the stage. They're doing their own sound check.
That was charming
another thing
too.
that I quite appreciated. And the sound check they did for the vocal mic was Tom DeLonge's first line from "I Miss You" by Blink-182.
Yeah.
Where are you? Just did the whole bit as his sound check for the mic. It was great fun. Then they disappear for a bit. They come back on stage at the start of the show. He leans into the microphone, and Eric, the lead singer, goes, "Yo, who up slamming they dunk right now?" And Becca makes that exact same sigh. And it was the highlight of the whole festival for me. It was great. And then they go on and play. They play a great set. They start off with some slow songs. They played some of their faster stuff from the new album. The whole time, like clearly having a great time on stage.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a really, really good 40-minute set. The original plan had been to do half of the Mum Jeans set and then disappear and go see the All American Rejects and get the whole of that.
But they charmed us so much. We
Absolutely.
just stayed.
We stuck
had to see
around.
the whole thing.
We did the whole Mum Jeans set and then instead caught the last sort of half hour of All American Rejects instead. Which sort of goes back to their show was very reminiscent of what we were talking about earlier. You know, the older bands.
Very much so.
Still enjoying what they're doing, but sort of clearly understanding that they are the previous generation. Very happy to be enjoyed. They made a comment about how like we were very happy to still be stuck on your MP3 player that's like buried in a cupboard somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think that was a nice touch. The only band that didn't really appeal in that way, and I feel bad talking about a band in a bad way, but the show was still good. But it was Head Automatica.
Yes.
Another band with one song from 20 years ago. While the Red Jumpsuit Apparatus were very good at managing their show in a way that appealed to people that probably only knew them for that one song, sort of explaining where you might know these other ones from, doing a cover to get the crowd going. Head Automatica seemed very sure that they were still the biggest thing there.
Very much so, yeah. There was an arrogance to them that kind of didn't go down well.
It didn't. The crowd wasn't quite there. It didn't help that they were probably the third or fourth band on the stage that day. It was still only about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But they insisted on playing a lot of their new stuff, introducing a brand new song, when people were there for Beating Hearts Baby and nothing else.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we were here for. It's what I reckon 80% of the crowd were there for as well.
Yeah.
And like they performed it very well.
They
The guy's
did.
still got like a good pair of pipes on him. He's he's a very good performer.
And it would have been fine if it had been a concert that was literally theirs. Like if they'd been, if they were headlining or even just supporting another artist at a specific concert that people had paid just to see them for, would have gone down absolutely fine. But on a festival, you know why you're there. You know you're there to perform your popular stuff. You know that the vast majority of people have probably paid to see, yes, you, but a bunch of other people. It's not really the time to be bringing new stuff out that you're not sure is going to be a hit. In my opinion, anyway.
No, I think it's completely fair. I think the closest comparison to Slam Dunk that you can get in America is this festival that's of varying levels of success in the last few years called When We Were Young Festival. Have you heard of this one?
I've heard of this, yeah.
A festival entirely built around bands that were really big 15, 20 years ago. Slam Dunk has a very, very similar vibe to that. It's presented as like, check out all these classic bands. The appeal was, here's a band that broke up 5 years ago that are coming back to do a reunion.
Yeah, you've heard of them for like these 2 songs maybe.
Yeah. The headlining act, You Me at 6, who we still need to talk about.
Yeah.
The appeal of going to see them is this is their last ever festival show.
Yeah.
You remember when you used to listen to these guys when you were in school? Well, you're never going to hear them live again, so come along. And the selling point of Slam Dunk is it's old bands playing their old stuff, and then we'll sprinkle in a couple of new artists as well to sort of introduce them and build them up. But you can't be an old band trying to
Make it
flog
relevant
your new
again.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's not what it's for. You're not going to revitalize your career with a show at Slam Dunk.
No.
It's not what it's designed for. You can put on a fantastic show at Slam Dunk. Many of these bands did.
Yeah.
But it's not going to like explode your career again.
Your time is done, make way for the new people.
Exactly. And I think that's something that not a lot of the artists, but a lot of artists in general that are at that point in their career don't quite understand.
Yeah.
Going back to Jumpsuit, one thing that they did were like, they said, hey, who out here has heard of us before, played Face Down? But they were also like, there's tons of other great bands out there.
Yeah.
Go and shout out which band are you most excited to see today? And then got everyone to shout out their favorite band. and then followed it up with the inevitable punchline of, I didn't hear a single word of that, but I hope you have a good time.
Yeah.
It sounds far more collaborative that way when they're, because it is a festival of multiple bands and everyone is there in the same genre there to support each other.
Absolutely. 100%.
I mean, that's one interesting thing about, we'll go into Yumi at 6 then, because they've, obviously been around for about 20 years.
Yep.
They did their final show.
Yeah.
What was your take on them as being one of the front runners from 20 years ago, but also still, like, they released an album last year, which I covered and I thought it was excellent. Like, did they have a particular presence compared to everyone else as the headliners, or?
Honestly, yeah. So I think I said this earlier, but like, they made it very clear that they are stopping because it's very much their choice, not because like, they've run out of gas. Like, immediately, so obvious why they were the headliners. They had such presence from the get-go. Like, honestly, it is probably one of the most fun gigs I've ever been to, because the crowd was so on side from the first word that came out of his mouth. And like, they just played the hits because, again, they knew what they were there for. They knew what people wanted to hear, and they went straight into it. Like, you get your amble about, we're so happy to be here, like, thank you for joining us, this is, our farewell bit. But, they kicked off with the two big songs immediately, like
Underdogs and
no, Underdog we missed. Underdog was last, I think. But we had Reckless straight away, and he didn't like try and do any big funny preamble about it. He went, I'm feeling pretty reckless. Bang, straight into it.
No, yeah, absolutely. It's I guess when you're like knowingly at the end of your career, they announced that they were breaking up 6-8 months ago.
Yeah.
And they've still got until the end of this year before they do their final show. And I think knowing that going in changes the mentality completely.
Yeah.
If you're a band who, had a huge hit a couple of years ago, you did all the talk shows, you got all the number ones, you made all the money, and you're now performing in like bars to 200 people. And then you decide, maybe it's time to pack it in. I imagine it's a very different vibe to having your 6th to last show, your final festival performance, be attended by all these people, many of which were here just to see your final show.
Yeah.
So much of the festival was geared around that. There was a hearse out by the front gate to the festival with R.I.P. Yumi at 6 in flowers on it, which was good fun. It was the event of the whole thing.
They know what they're doing.
They know what
100%.
they're doing, and they absolutely put on the kind of show you'd expect from a band that knows that,
people have come to see them.
People have come to see them for what made them big. They're not going to be like, oh, who wants to hear a deep cut from the new album? They're going to go, no, we're going to play the Ollie Sykes song.
Yeah.
We're going to play
the Shikari song.
We're going to play Reckless. We're doing Loverboy. Like, they're just doing all the hits. It was all bangers the whole way through.
They did the song from Thorpe Park, man.
They played the Thorpe Park song,
which was amazing.
Very good. I absolutely slaps.
It
Great
does.
song.
It really does.
They get up, they do a couple of warm up songs. Still bangers, still ones that you'd recognize even if you weren't that into them. And then they stop and they go, right, we're not going to have to do this much longer. We're going to play 6 heavy bangers in a row, and I want the mosh pit to keep going the whole time.
Yeah.
Again, coming back to like the bands love the mosh pit, and then played like all of their heavy bangers one after the other, and it was fantastic. Good stuff.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, obviously I saw them last year, and to think that even a year and a half later, now that they've announced it, they still have the same energy that they did then after the release of a new album. I think that's where the authenticity shines. Even when they know that this is it, they're done, they're finished.
Yeah, there's no phoning it in.
They're still willing to entertain the fans because that's who
they are.
Yeah.
They've already sold the tickets. They don't have to worry about the sales for the next album dipping. They could phone it in if they wanted to, and they don't.
Yeah.
And that's what's important. That's why they're a good band. It's why they're going to be fondly remembered.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are like Yumi at 6 is a good band. There are better bands out there who have faded away to nothing because they didn't have that same energy when they were breaking up. And I think that's really gonna benefit them moving forward. Because, like, let's be fair, no band breaks up forever.
No.
They'll be back.
Look at Mallory.
Mallory Knox are back in October.
Yeah,
exactly. And I really think, if they come back, they do a reunion show in 5, 10, even 20 years' time.
I'll be seated. I'd go.
They're still going to have that fan base. We'll all be in our 50s by that point, but they'll be there and they'll be willing to turn up because they're a band that cares about that impression.
And what would you say is your final comment on Slam Dunk as a festival and as a part of it? When you were there and looking back on it now, what's the thing that you really remember? What defined it?
Made me feel quite young. There's a lot.
You're 26.
I know. Yeah, I know. But there were a lot of bands there that were younger than me, definitely. But a lot of bands that were much older and still doing very well, and a lot of fans that were a lot older than me as well. There are a lot of people that have brought their kids who are like 5 or 6 or younger, because that generation that grew up with those bands are now at that point in their lives. I thought I didn't pit all that much this time, mainly because a lot of the bands that we saw weren't really geared towards it. And I know that Becca's got a different story about this entirely, and I'll let you go on about that as well. But the pits that I were in were all very good, all very respectful. Obviously, the point of a mosh pit is not to start a fight and sort of declare dominance and show how strong you are. It's to just let loose a little bit, have a bit of freedom to go ape shit. And I feel like the pits, especially at Mallory, where everyone was just happy to be there again, were really sort of aligned with that.
Cathartic.
Absolutely. Slam Dunk is very much a veterans festival. Everyone that's been there, I reckon, has been to shows and festivals before. You don't get a lot of newbies there. Not that it's gatekeeping them out. It's the type of music that people have been listening to for years. There's very few brand new bands there that people go to see just for that. And I feel like it was an experienced festival full of people that knew what they were doing, and I personally really appreciated that.
Yeah, for me, so this was my first Slam Dunk. Obviously, I've done festivals and I've done gigs before, but this was my first Slam Dunk, and it really felt like I had been inducted into a bit of history. It feels like an arena where you are being brought into a bit of pop punk history. It feels like you're being welcomed into a place where everyone is happy to be there because they just love this kind of music so much. It wouldn't matter who was playing, they would turn up. Like, the name Slam Dunk is what people are going for, like, not just any specific band. Like, yeah, obviously you had, like, we met people who traveled down from Germany just to come and see Mallory again. And, like, yeah, you do have people who have gone very specifically for a band. Like, I myself, I was gonna go, but then Against the Current was announced, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm not missing this, because, again, it's been years since I've seen them live. But, yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised by the fact that, even if it hadn't been Against the Current there, I'd have been grabbed all day, because there's so much passion, there's so much sincerity coming from the bands to the audience, and then the audience for the bands. I did have one, not great experience, which was a couple of the pits during Against the Current, which, again, I've said before, it's not really a pit band. I know the atmosphere of a festival makes everything, up for grabs when it comes to the pits, but, there was a couple where it was very clearly these guys just want to have a fight.
And you'll always get...
And you always get one or
like
two.
that.
Yeah, and that's not great. But, it hasn't ruined the experience for me. I still loved getting to see one of my favourite bands in the world live, and getting right up close to them was phenomenal. And yeah, I've said the name a few times, but Honey Revenge, I'm sold. I'm really, really looking forward to, I hope they tour here soon again, and I'd probably go just to their show. And I think that's what festivals like this do. Slam Dunk maybe not as much, because there wasn't as much new music, new people who didn't already have some kind of a fan base who'd already heard of them. But that's what festivals like this are great for. They bring you into a whole different side of the music that you might not appreciate. Again, Mom Jeans, brilliant. Pennywise, I'll probably start listening to a bit more as well, because they really left an imprint on me. And that's really what I think is important about festivals like Slam Dunk, that honour their heritage, and that make it clear, this is a name that we always get good talent, but it's about the people more than it is anything else. It's about, respecting where you come from and paving the way for the future.
Absolutely. I'd also add, very well organised.
Yeah, incredible.
Security was very good.
Yep.
queuing to get in was very orderly.
Super easy.
We turned up at a good time for that, but even getting out was very smooth.
Yeah.
Trains all worked fine. It was all like managed really well. Enough water, top ups. The food wasn't even that extortionate.
No, it wasn't.
Still expensive, if you can help it, bring a sandwich, but it wasn't bad. The general just like organization of it from like an event standpoint, I thought was excellent as well.
Yeah, really impressed.
Which I wasn't necessarily expecting from a pop punk festival. So, yeah, pretty good.
Thumbs up all round.
Thumbs up all round. I'd
10
go
out of 10.
again.
Why not?
I'm going to move this over here because now I can. It's probably the first time people are actually going to be able to hear me. God, I hope not. Well, thank you both for that. It's only going to be a quick one, obviously. Well, I mean, we're 55 minutes that we've done. So, well, thank you for that. It's very informative. Will you be going next year?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep, there you go. It's sold just like that. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Obviously, that was James and Becka. James obviously has already had his episode from, that was like October. My God, long time ago. And there have been spoilers for your one, Becca, but that will be coming up soon. They'll be against the current. We won't say which one, but I'll leave you hanging there. And yeah, let me know if you guys have been to Slam Duck at all, any festivals that are very similar to it. I'd love to hear the stories. I'm sure there's plenty of them. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one.